A people living under natural conditions in communion with nature will carefully note the appearance of natural objects in their environment. They become acquainted with the various aspects of the landscape and of the living things, plants and animals in their changes through the seasons, in storm and calm, in activity and in repose. Becoming thus intimately acquainted with the life about them, the people will come to regard some of the more notable forms with a feeling akin to that which they have towards persons, and hence they come to have place in folk stories, in reasoned discourse and in ceremonies of religion. Commonly throughout the region of the Missouri River inhabited by the Dakota and Omaha nations was to be seen the cottonwood, the willows of several species, and the cedar or juniper. The appearance and habits of these trees impressed themselves powerfully upon the mind and imagination of the aboriginal folk. The cedar or juniper was wonderful because it was evergreen. Unlike other trees, it appeared indifferent to frost and to heat, but alike in winter and summer retained its leaves. Also it appeared to be withdrawn, solitary and silent, standing dark and still, like a warrior standing upon a hill with his robe drawn over his head in prayer and meditation. Thus it gave the suggestion, and had the appearance of being in communion with the high powers. Leaves and twigs of cedar were burned as incense in ceremonial rituals in order that evil influences might be driven away. Willows were always found growing along watercourses, as though they had some duty or function in the world in connection with water, the element so immediately and constantly needful to man and to all other living things. Water was not only imperatively necessary for vivifying and reanimating all living things, but was an active agent in processes of change and transmutation. In cases of disease, the evil influences which plagued the body might be driven out, and thus health might be restored through the use of water transformed into vapor by means of heat. So the vapor bath was used. Also, if a man contemplated the undertaking of any serious project, any dangerous mission, or any solemn enterprise, it was important first to prepare himself by purification, by means of the vapor bath, from all evil influences. The framework of the vapor bath lodge was made of willow poles, bent and tied with their bark. The willow was also mystically connected with that greatest change of all, the departure of the spirit from the body, the change which we call death. Willow twigs had certain uses in funeral rites. The cottonwood was found growing over a widely extended range, under diverse climatic conditions, appearing always self-reliant, showing prodigious fecundity, and having wonderful means of propagation. It provided its seed, produced in enormous number, with a device by which they traveled on the wind to far places, and so became widely disseminated in all directions, traveling upstream or downstream, and even across the plains and prairies to other streams where the new generation might establish itself. The foliage of the cottonwood is peculiar and remarkable, so that it may be said the air is never so still that there is not motion of cottonwood leaves. Even in still and sultry summer afternoons, and at night when all else was still, ever they could hear the rustling of cottonwood leaves by the passage of little vagrant currents of air. Secret messages seemed ever to be passing in soft whispers among the cottonwood leaves. And the winds themselves are the bearers of the messages and commands of the higher powers, so there was constant reminder of the mystic character of this tree. The cottonwood was, among trees, the symbol of fidelity, one of the four great virtues inculcated by the ethical code of the people of the Dakota Nation. So from all these considerations, it might be expected that this tree should have an important place in the rituals of the people for many generations associated with it. And so it had. The sacred pole of the Omaha Nation was made of the cottonwood. The sacred pole was an object of the greatest veneration to the people of that nation, similarly as the Ark of the Covenant was sacred to the Hebrew nation. The sacred tree, the central object of the sun dance, the most momentous religious ritual of the Dakota Nation, was a cottonwood. The tree which should be chosen to be felled and brought into camp and set up in the lodge erected for the performance of this ritual, must be a growing cottonwood tree, the base of whose trunk is not less than 2 spans in circumference. The tree must be straight and forked at a distance from the ground of about 4 times the measure of the outstretched arms from hand to hand. Twigs and bark of cottonwood were burned as incense to ward against the scheming of a Nog-Ite, the spiteful malevolent being who foments scandals, strife and infidelity. Such then, were some of the relations in the philosophic thought, the religious conceptions and the sentiments of the people of the Dakota and Omaha nations in regard to these three species of trees.